This story is titled, After My Drunk Wife Joked About Our Child's Paternity, I requested a DNA test, but she accused me of distrusting her and threatened to leave. I must discover the real answer. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. But here I am, a 30-year-old man named Ethan with absolutely no one else to talk to about what might be the most devastating experience of my life. For the past 2 years, I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend Nina, who's 28. We met at my buddy Chris's housewarming party, and I still remember the moment she walked in wearing that blue dress. Man, I was completely done for. I could barely form coherent sentences when I tried to talk to her, but somehow, I managed to get her number that night. We started dating about a week later, and things moved quickly from there. I work as a pharmaceutical rep for a medical device company. Nothing fancy, but it keeps the lights on and pays the bills. I've always been pretty content with my life, steady job, good friends, and after meeting Nina, I thought I had found the relationship piece of the puzzle too. We moved way too damn fast, looking back. After only 5 months of dating, Nina's lease ended, and she suggested moving in together. It just makes sense financially, she said, and my dumbass was like, hell yeah, it does. At the time, it felt right. We got along great, enjoyed each other's company, and the idea of waking up next to her every day seemed perfect. About 4 months after moving in together, Nina got pregnant when our protection broke. She took the morning after pill, but it didn't work. Classic fuck-up, right? But honestly, after the initial shock wore off, I was actually kind of pumped about becoming a dad. I've always wanted kids, just maybe not this soon. Still, life happens when you're busy making other plans, and I was ready to embrace this new chapter. Nina had a really rough pregnancy. She threw up like crazy the first few months, not just morning sickness, but all-day sickness that left her exhausted and miserable. Then came the mood swings that were absolutely next level. 1 minute she'd be crying because the Thai place forgot her peanut sauce, and the next she'd be laughing hysterically at dog videos on her phone. I tried to be understanding because, hormones and growing a human inside you must be incredibly difficult. But it wasn't just the mood swings that concerned me. Nina started acting a bit off during her pregnancy in ways that, looking back now, should have raised some red flags. There was this one incident around month 3 that stands out in my memory. I had picked up her phone to check the time while mine was charging, and she literally jumped off the couch and snatched it out of my hand so fast I thought she was going to drop it. She got all weird, saying she had private work stuff on it and that patients wouldn't want others seeing their information. The thing is, Nina works as a receptionist at a physical therapy office. I couldn't help but wonder what super secret patient records she would be keeping on her personal phone. But I let it go, chalking it up to pregnancy hormones making her more anxious about privacy. Then there was that weird phase in the second trimester where Nina kept talking about this coworker named Ryan. It was always, Ryan said this, and Ryan thinks that, and Ryan is so funny. I didn't think much of it at first. People make friends at work, and I wasn't the jealous type. But then suddenly, after she got pregnant, it was like complete radio silence about Ryan. His name might as well have been banned from our conversations. I remember once casually asking, "Hey, whatever happened to that Ryan guy you used to talk about?" And she got all defensive, snapping back with, "Why are you so obsessed with my coworkers? That's weird, Ethan." She never mentioned the guy again. Looking back now, that was super suspicious, but at the time, I just wrote it off as another pregnancy mood swing. The doctor appointments were another thing I should have paid more attention to. During the first few months, Nina wanted me at every single one. I was taking time off work, rescheduling meetings, the whole deal, just to be there for her and our baby. Then around month 5, she suddenly changed her tune, saying, "You don't need to take time off work for these routine checkups. It's just boring weight and blood pressure stuff." When I insisted on coming to one appointment because I wanted to see the ultrasound, she rescheduled it twice, claiming the doctor had emergencies both times. I believed her, because why wouldn't I? Doctors have emergencies, right? There was also this weird thing with her mom, Barbara. Barbara and I had always gotten along great from the moment Nina introduced us. But during the pregnancy, she started giving me these looks, like sad puppy eyes or something. One time, she hugged me way too long after Sunday dinner and said, "You're a good man, Ethan," in this weird, almost mournful voice. At the time, I thought she was just emotional about becoming a grandmother. But stupid me, I brushed all of this off. Pregnancy hormones, I told myself. She's growing a human. Cut her some slack. You're just being paranoid. I made excuses for everything because I didn't want to believe there could be something wrong. Our son Lucas was born 3 months ago. According to Nina, he came 2 weeks early, but the nurses kept saying what a healthy size he was for being premature. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too busy being amazed that I was actually someone's dad now. The hospital staff even let me cut the cord and everything. I cried like a baby myself, to be honest. It was the best day of my life, or so I thought. The first few weeks were rough with the no sleep and constant diaper changes, but we got through it. Nina's mom came to stay with us for a week to help out, which was honestly a lifesaver. She cooked, cleaned, even took night shifts with Lucas so we could get a few hours of uninterrupted sleep. I was super grateful for that. But there was something off about Barbara's behavior during her stay. She kept watching me when I held Lucas, giving me that same weird, sad look I'd noticed during the pregnancy. It was like she viewed me as some kind of charity case, but I figured maybe she was just emotional. New grandma, first grandkid, all that sentimental stuff. One night I was passing by the kitchen to grab some water when I overheard Barbara say to Nina in a low, serious voice, "You need to tell him." Before I could step in, they both went silent. I walked in like nothing happened, and Nina plastered on this big fake smile while Barbara suddenly got way too focused on stirring whatever was on the stove. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured Barbara was just telling Nina to be more open about how exhausted she was with the new baby. She'd been pushing the whole "you need to communicate your needs" thing ever since Lucas was born. So later that night, I casually brought it up just to check. "What did your mom mean earlier when she said you need to tell me something?" I asked. Nina barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, that," she said dismissively. "She just thinks I need to tell you how overwhelming this all is for me. You know, new mom struggles, sleep deprivation, the usual." That made sense, so I told her. "I mean, you can talk to me about that stuff, you know that, right?" She sighed and said, "Yeah, I know. She just worries too much." I let it go. In my head, it was just Barbara being Barbara. Overly involved, overly emotional, always trying to give Nina advice she didn't ask for. Still, I tried to be as supportive as I could with the baby and with Nina's adjustment to motherhood. Lucas is a cute kid. There's no denying that. He's got these big blue eyes that everyone says will probably change color eventually. Nina's eyes are brown, and mine are hazel. But apparently that's normal genetic stuff. At least that's what Nina kept insisting whenever anyone mentioned it. When my mom visited and commented that Lucas doesn't really look like me or anyone in our family, Nina practically dragged her outside for a private chat. She came back in all fake smiles, but I could tell she was pissed. I did notice that Lucas doesn't really have any of my features. Not my nose, not my chin, nothing that would make you think, "Yep, that's definitely Ethan's kid." But I kept telling myself that lots of babies just look like potatoes at first, right? They don't really start resembling their parents until they're older. At least that's what I'd heard. So yeah, that's where things were at 3 months in. Me playing happy dad, Nina being weird about her phone, and getting all defensive anytime someone mentioned who Lucas looks like. I was trying to ignore the nagging doubts in the back of my mind, focusing instead on being the best father I could be. But everything changed last Sunday at dinner with Nina's parents. We do this thing where we go over there every other weekend. Barbara makes lasagna or pot roast. Greg, Nina's dad, talks about his fishing trips, and we all pretend we're the perfect little family. It's usually boring as hell, but whatever, free food. This particular Sunday started normal enough. We showed up around 5 p.m., Nina carrying Lucas in his car seat. Barbara immediately took him while making those weird baby noises adults do when they're around infants. Greg gave me a beer, and we headed to the living room while the women stayed in the kitchen. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but that's just how they roll over there. I've offered to help cook before, and Barbara acts like I suggested burning the house down. Greg was watching some trashy TV show, one of those Maury-type deals where they do the dramatic paternity test reveals. You know the ones where the dude is either crying or doing backflips depending on if he's the dad or not. I was half paying attention, scrolling through my fantasy football lineup on my phone. Nina came in from the kitchen with Lucas and plopped down next to me on the couch. On TV, there was some guy literally jumping on furniture, screaming, "I told y'all I ain't the daddy!" while the mother burst into tears. Classic trash TV moment. I glanced at Nina, expecting an eye roll or some snarky comment about how ridiculous this show was. But nope, she was laughing. Like really laughing, a little too much. It started off normal, but then just kept going, becoming louder and higher pitched, almost forced. She was clutching Lucas like she was afraid he was going to float away, her face turning red from the intensity of her laughter. "Damn," I said, raising an eyebrow. "Didn't know this was your kind of humor." She waved a hand, still giggling. "It's just, God, these people," she gasped between laughs. "It's so dramatic, like, can you imagine?" And then, completely out of nowhere, she blurted out, "What if you're not Lucas's dad?" Then she laughed again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the belly laugh from before. It was weird, high-pitched, almost robotic, like she was forcing it out, trying to cover up the fact that she'd just said something really, really dumb. The room went dead silent. Greg muted the TV mid-paternity test reveal. Barbara, who was in the kitchen stirring a pot of sauce, dropped a spoon so hard it clattered against the floor. I just stared at Nina, my brain completely stalling out. Like, what the actual hell did she just say? She was still holding Lucas, but she suddenly looked like she wanted to disappear. Her eyes darted around the room like she was trying to gauge how badly she'd just messed up. Then, in a voice way too eager, she quickly added, "I'm totally kidding. Look at his chin dimple, that's all you!" Her fake smile was so forced it might as well have been drawn on with a Sharpie. The thing is, I don't have a chin dimple. Never had one. But you know who does? Nina's brother. That detail hit me like a truck. Greg cleared his throat and cranked the TV volume back up way too loud. Barbara called from the kitchen that dinner was ready, even though I could see from where I was sitting that she was still stirring the pasta. The rest of dinner was awkward as hell. Greg kept talking about fishing lures way too enthusiastically. Barbara barely said 2 words, just kept giving Nina these shut the fuck up looks whenever she tried to start a conversation. Nina was doing this nervous thing where she talks too much and too fast about nothing important. I just focused on eating and holding Lucas when he got fussy. On the drive home, I tried bringing it up. "That was a strange joke at your parents' house," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. She got super defensive right away. "Oh my God, can't you take a joke? It was just because of that stupid show your dad was watching. Why are you being so serious about this?" "It just seemed like a weird thing to joke about," I pressed. "And you said he has my chin dimple, but I don't have one." "Jesus, Ethan, it's just a stupid dimple. He has your eyes," she snapped back. "But he definitely doesn't have my eyes either. Mine are hazel, Nina's are brown, and Lucas's are bright blue. I took high school biology. I know that's not how genetics are supposed to work, but I didn't say that part out loud. I'm not trying to start a fight," I said, trying to de-escalate the situation. It just caught me off guard. "Well, stop making such a big deal about it. God, you're being paranoid!" She was getting increasingly agitated. "Is this because your ex cheated on you? Are you projecting that onto me now?" That was a low blow. My ex from college did cheat, and Nina knows that's a sore spot for me. But bringing it up felt like she was trying to make me the bad guy for questioning her weird-ass joke. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. I kept replaying the moment in my head, the way she said it, the panic when no one laughed, the way her parents reacted. They weren't confused but tense, like they knew something I didn't. It made me look into things more closely. That night while Nina was in the shower, I found myself staring at Lucas in his crib, really looking at him for maybe the first time. I was trying to find myself in his face. Any feature, any resemblance that would quiet the doubts now screaming in my head. His hair was darkening to a color closer to Nina's. His nose was tiny and turned up like hers. Mine's a big old schnoz thanks to my dad's Italian genes. His eyes were nothing like either of ours. Could all this be normal, right? Genetics are weird. Not every kid is a carbon copy of their parents. But combined with that comment at dinner, I couldn't stop the thoughts from spinning in my head. The next few days, I tried to observe Nina more closely to see if there were any other signs. And honestly, nothing felt different. Nina was the same as she'd always been. Busy with Lucas, exhausted, but still joking around with me like usual. If anything, she seemed more affectionate. Always leaning against me on the couch, kissing my forehead when she passed by. Little things like that. The comment at dinner was still nagging at me, though. But she didn't act weird afterward. No nervous energy, no avoiding me. If I brought up Lucas, she was just as doting as always. One thing did stand out, though. The gym. She had started going back a few weeks after Lucas was born. I didn't think much of it at the time. She'd been really into fitness before the pregnancy, always talking about how she couldn't wait to get back into her routine. Now she was going 3 times a week, always at the same time, never missing a session. I joked one night, "You're more committed than I am. Maybe I should start tagging along." She barely looked up from folding Lucas's onesies. "Babe, it's literally the only thing I do that's just for me," she said quietly. "Can you please let me have this?" It wasn't even said in a defensive way, more like she was exhausted and begging me not to take this one small freedom away from her. I backed off, told her I was just joking. I started to think maybe I was overreacting to the whole situation. But then, about a week after the dinner incident, I overheard Nina on the phone with her sister. I was in the living room with Lucas while she was in the bedroom, the door halfway closed. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but her voice was loud enough to carry. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, Zoe," she groaned into the phone. "It just came out before I could stop it." She paused, then started laughing. I know, it was so stupid. You should have seen his face, though, and my parents. Oh my God, you could hear a pin drop." I felt my stomach tighten as I listened. Her sister must have asked if she had cleared it up, because Nina sighed and said, "Yeah, I told him it was a joke." There was another pause before she continued. "I mean, obviously it's not like I'd actually..." She cut herself off abruptly. "Anyway, yeah, he seemed fine after. I should have walked in right then. I should have asked why the hell she even felt the need to clarify that. It's not like I'd actually do whatever she was about to say. But instead, I just sat there bouncing Lucas on my knee, pretending I didn't just hear something that made my chest feel tight with anxiety. I think she noticed how aware I've been lately, though, because she started acting weird about me holding Lucas. Before all this, she was happy to let me take him so she could nap or shower. Now she's constantly hovering, taking him from me, saying he needs his mommy whenever he makes the slightest fuss. And when my mom visited last week and innocently commented that Lucas doesn't look much like our side of the family yet, Nina nearly had a meltdown in the car afterward. She called my mom judgmental and said she was trying to cause problems. My mom is the sweetest person ever and definitely wasn't trying to start anything. I kept trying to squash my suspicions, told myself I was being paranoid. But that stupid comment at her parents' house had planted a seed in my brain, and it was growing roots by the day. I started Googling stuff like how to tell if baby is yours, and when do babies start to look like dad late at night when Nina was asleep. I read that babies often look more like their dads early on, as some evolutionary thing to make sure dads stick around and protect the offspring. But Lucas, nothing about him screamed Ethan Jr. The suspicions kept growing, and I started seeing Lucas as a random kid that's not mine. I noticed myself going too far with these thoughts, but I didn't know what to do about it. I needed evidence, one way or another, to either confirm my suspicions or put them to rest for good. The breaking point came 3 nights ago. We were arguing about whose turn it was to wash the bottles. I'd been working overtime all week and was dead tired. Nina was complaining that she'd done them 3 nights in a row, which wasn't even true, it was twice, but whatever. Mid-argument, she pulled the ultimate mom card. "I pushed out your son. The least you could do is wash his bottles without bitching about it," she snapped at me. Something in me just snapped. Before my brain could stop my mouth, I said, "Is he actually my son, though?" Because I'm starting to wonder. Holy fuck, the look on her face. I've never seen someone go from angry to ghost white terrified that fast in my life. She literally froze for like 3 full seconds, just staring at me with her mouth open. Then she exploded. I'm talking nuclear-level meltdown. "How dare you? I carried him for 9 months," she screamed. "I've been up every night with him while you sleep through his crying, and you have the nerve to question if he's yours? What kind of monster does that?" She was screaming so loud I was worried the neighbors would call the cops. Lucas started crying in his crib from all the noise, but I didn't back down this time. "If there's nothing to hide, let's just do a DNA test and put my stupid fears to rest," I said, trying to stay calm. "Should be no big deal if he's mine, right?" That's when she completely lost it. She grabbed a vase off the coffee table and threw it against the wall. Glass shattered everywhere. Then she started sobbing, like full-body heaving sobs. "I'm not subjecting my son to a test because you're insecure," she cried. "If you don't trust me, what do we even have? How can we be a family if you think I'm a liar and a cheater?" She stormed into the bedroom, and I went to check on Lucas to make sure he was okay with all the yelling. When I came back out, Nina was shoving clothes into a duffel bag. "What are you doing?" I asked, though it was pretty obvious. "I'm not staying here with someone who thinks I'm a whore," she said, still crying. "I'm taking Lucas to my parents' house until you get your head straight." I tried to calm things down. "Nina, come on! We need to talk about this like adults." "There's nothing to talk about," she shot back. "You either trust me and drop this or you don't. It's that simple." She packed up Lucas's diaper bag, grabbed him from his crib, and was out the door before I could even process what was happening. She sent me a text 20 minutes later, saying she'd made it to her parents' place safely, like I gave a fuck about her at that point. I just wanted to know Lucas was okay. I didn't know what to think after she left. The weight of it all hit me at once. What if I was wrong? What if I'd just blown up my entire family over paranoia? But at the same time, what if I was right? And if I was, then what the hell had the past year of my life even been? She stayed at her parents' for 3 full days. Her mom called me on day 2 to say I should be ashamed of myself for accusing Nina of such a terrible thing. I asked Barbara point blank if she knew for sure Lucas was mine, and she hung up on me. That told me everything I needed to know. Nina came back on Friday. She walked in all calm like nothing had happened, said she'd been thinking about things, and could understand why I might have doubts given my past with cheating exes. She gave me an ultimatum. Drop this paternity question completely, and we can work on rebuilding our trust, or we're done. I won't raise my son with someone who doesn't trust me. Notice how she said my son and not our son. Yeah, I caught that too. I decided to play along just to get to the truth. So I pretended to agree. I told her I was sorry for overreacting, that I loved her and Lucas and wanted us to be a family. She seemed to buy it, but things were still tense all weekend. Lots of fake smiles and forced conversations. But in my head, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't going away. That comment at her parents' house, her extreme reaction to me asking for a test, I needed to know the truth. So on Monday, I ordered one of those at-home DNA paternity test kits online. I paid extra for next-day delivery. It showed up Tuesday while Nina was at work. I hid the box in my gym bag in the trunk of my car. I tried to act normal for the next few days. Pretended everything was fine. Helped with Lucas. Did the dishes without being asked. I even brought Nina flowers one night to really sell the I'm over it act. Inside, though, I was a mess. I was barely sleeping, checking her phone whenever she left it around, which was almost never. I even followed her to the gym one day but didn't find anything off. On Thursday, I finally got my chance. Nina said she was going to take a long shower to relax. Lucas was napping in his crib. Perfect timing. I grabbed the test kit from my car, read the instructions like 5 times to make sure I didn't mess it up. You're supposed to swab the inside of the kid's cheek, then do your own, seal them up separately, and mail them off. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely open the package. I crept into Lucas's room, staring at this little dude who might not be mine. He was out cold, doing that twitchy dream thing babies do. For a second, I almost backed out. What if I'm wrong and just destroying my relationship over nothing? But then I remembered Nina's face when I asked for a test. Not confused or hurt, scared. That's not how innocent people react. I gently swabbed the inside of Lucas's cheek, trying not to wake him up. He stirred a little but didn't wake up. I sealed that swab in its container, then did my own cheek and sealed it up. I packed everything back in the envelope with my credit card info. The shower turned off right as I was finishing. I shoved the envelope in my pocket and barely made it back to the living room before Nina came out in her bathrobe. She asked what I was doing, and I said I was just checking on Lucas. I mailed the test on my lunch break the next day. Paid $200 for rush processing. They said results would come in 2 to 3 business days. I thought I was in the clear until Saturday morning. Nina was doing laundry. Yeah, I know I should have done it myself. Rookie mistake. And found the DNA lab receipt in my jacket pocket. I'd completely forgotten it was in there. She came into the living room where I was feeding Lucas, holding the receipt like it was covered in poison. Nina stormed into the living room, gripping the crumpled receipt in her hand like it was evidence in a courtroom. Her face was red, eyes wild with anger and fear. "What the fuck is this?" she spat, shoving the paper toward me. I barely glanced at it. I already knew what she'd found. Lucas started fussing in my arms, squirming like he could feel the tension in the room. I took a deep breath and met her eyes. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said calmly. She yelled, "You went behind my back after you promised me you were done with this! When did you even swab him? While I was in the shower? Are you freaking kidding me?" She was screaming now. Lucas let out a sharp wail, and I instinctively pulled him closer, rubbing his back to soothe him. "If you've got nothing to hide, why are you so afraid of the results?" My voice was steady. I wasn't about to match her level of hysteria, not in front of Lucas. Nina's whole body trembled as she sucked in these sharp, uneven breaths. Then she broke, full-on ugly crying. "Even if he is yours, you've ruined us," she choked out between sobs. How can I ever trust you again? You went behind my back. You took my baby's DNA without asking me. I walked over, gently setting Lucas in his swing. I needed my hands free for this conversation. I won't apologize for needing to know the truth. My voice was firmer now. But I am sorry I had to do it this way. You left me no choice, Nina. This doubt has been eating me alive. Her sobs hitched, and she wiped at her face angrily. Why couldn't you just trust me? I laughed. A bitter, humorless laugh. Are you serious? After everything? You make that weird-ass comment at your parents' house, then freak out anytime someone mentions who Lucas looks like. I try to talk about it, and you shut me down. I bring up the timeline, and you get defensive. What was I supposed to think? She went quiet, her lips pressing together into a tight line. When do the results come in? Her voice was small now. Monday or Tuesday, I replied. She gave a slow nod and stared at me for a long moment. Then she tilted her head. And if they show he's yours, what then? I didn't even hesitate. Then I spend however long it takes making this up to you. Rebuilding our trust. Proving I love you and Lucas. And I meant it. I really did. But then her expression changed, darkened. And if they show what you're thinking? That he's not yours? That caught me off guard a bit. I hadn't let myself fully think that far ahead. I don't know, I admitted. Nina inhaled sharply, then turned on her heel. She scooped Lucas up from the swing and held him against her like a shield. I'm taking him to my parents for the rest of the weekend, she announced. I didn't stop her, just nodded. Probably for the best, I muttered. I needed the space. Because if those results came back how I suspected they would, I had no idea what I was going to do next. She packed a bag and left within 30 minutes. I spent the weekend alone in our apartment, and it felt like my whole world was balanced on the edge of a cliff, about to go over at any moment. The email with the test results came in Monday morning while I was at work. I took my lunch break early and went to sit in my car to open it. It was one of those moments where time slows down, you know? I legit sat there staring at the unopened email for like 10 minutes before I had the balls to click it. The results were right there at the top in big, bold letters. Probability of paternity, 0%. I threw up right there in the parking lot. It felt like someone had ripped my heart out through my throat. All those night feedings, all those diapers, all those times I told him I loved him, all based on a lie. I called my boss and told him I had a family emergency. Then I drove home in a daze, almost ran a red light because I couldn't focus. I just kept seeing those words. 0% probability. Nina had texted that she was coming home after work to talk about whatever the results said. I texted back just 2 words. They're in. She must have left work early because she showed up at the apartment less than an hour later with Lucas. She took one look at my face and knew. Ethan, please let me explain, she began, her voice already breaking. I just held up my phone with the results. 0%. Nina broke down immediately. She put Lucas in his swing and collapsed on the couch, sobbing. Between hiccups and tears, she finally told me the truth. Apparently, last year after we had that big fight about me going to Chris's bachelor party in Vegas, she got even by going out with her work friends. She met up with Ryan, her coworker, at some bar. They got wasted and went back to his place. It was just once. I took Plan B the next morning, I swear, she cried. But it didn't work. By the time I realized I was pregnant, we were so happy together. I convinced myself it had to be yours. The timing was so close. You let me believe he was mine for a year, I said, my voice hollow. You watched me paint his nursery. You let me cut the cord at the hospital. Nina kept reaching for me, but I backed away. I couldn't stand the thought of her touching me. Ryan doesn't want kids. He made that clear from the beginning, she continued desperately. But you're already such a good dad to Lucas. He loves you. We can work through this, have more kids, our kids. Stop, just stop, I cut her off, grabbing my keys and phone. I'm staying at Chris's tonight. When I come back tomorrow, I want you gone. Ethan, please, we can fix this. She was hysterical now. I didn't say anything else. I just walked out while she was still crying and begging me to stay. I blocked her number as soon as I got in the car, then drove to Chris's place and told him everything. That night was rough. I kept scrolling through pictures of Lucas on my phone, trying to see if there was any part of me in him at all. There wasn't. Just Nina and Ryan. It felt like I was looking at a stranger, not the baby I'd spent the last 3 months caring for, loving and thinking of as my son. I took the next day off work. I couldn't face people yet, couldn't handle the "how's the baby?" questions that I knew would come. Around noon, I unblocked Nina's number just to see if she'd left the apartment. I had 47 texts waiting, mostly variations of "please come home" and "we can work this out, and Lucas needs you." I replied with one text, "Are you out of the apartment?" She said yes, she was at her parents'. So I went back to our place. My place, technically, since I'm the only one on the lease. Walking in was surreal. She'd taken most of Lucas's clothes and toys, but his crib was still there. His baby swing. The changing table I'd put together while she was 8 months pregnant. All I could think about was how the fuck did this become my life? I spent that night making lists of practical things I needed to do. Find a lawyer, figure out if I'm legally responsible since my name is on the birth certificate, decide if I should break the lease or kick her out permanently. And just like that, I found myself in a legal nightmare. Since my name is on Lucas's birth certificate, I'm legally his father in the eyes of the court. Doesn't matter that the DNA test says otherwise. In this state, if you sign the birth certificate, you're accepting responsibility as the father. Period. The lawyer explained that I need to file a petition to disestablish paternity as soon as possible. There's a limited time window to challenge paternity after discovering you're not the biological father, and it varies by state. In my state, it's 1 year. If I wait too long, I could be on the hook for child support for the next 18 years for a kid that isn't mine. Imagine that. 18 years. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Just filing the petition doesn't guarantee the court will remove me from the birth certificate. The judge has to consider the best interests of the child. So even though Lucas isn't biologically mine, if the court decides I've established a father-son relationship with him, they could still make me legally responsible. When the lawyer told me this, I nearly lost my shit right there in his office. How is that fair? I was tricked into believing I was this kid's father. I didn't choose this. He stayed super professional, though, explaining that our case is strong because Lucas is only 3 months old, so the relationship isn't that established yet. Plus, we have clear DNA evidence I'm not the father, and we know who the potential biological father is, Ryan. The plan was to file the petition to disestablish my paternity and simultaneously file to establish Ryan's paternity. We're going to force him to take a DNA test and take responsibility for his kid. Nina was served papers on Friday. She showed up at my apartment that night, completely hysterical. Wouldn't stop banging on the door and screaming until I threatened to call the cops. The neighbors definitely heard everything. "How could you do this to Lucas?" she kept yelling through the door. "He's innocent in all this!" Yeah, no shit, so was I. But I wasn't the one who created this situation. She finally left when I started recording her meltdown on my phone through the door crack. Smart enough to know that wouldn't look good in court, I guess. Her dad called me the next morning. Greg's always been a decent guy, so I took the call. He was calmer than Nina, but still pretty heated. "Son, I understand you're hurt. What Nina did was wrong," he began. "But that baby boy needs a father." I cut him off. "He has a father. It's her coworker and your daughter knew that all along." There was a long pause, then he said, "Did you ever consider that maybe Nina made a mistake? But she chose you to be Lucas's dad because she knew you'd be good at it? That maybe this was her messed up way of trying to build a family with you?" "Greg, she lied to me every single day," I responded. "She watched me build a nursery for a kid she knew probably wasn't mine. How would you feel if someone did that to you?" He sighed. "I'd feel exactly like you do. But I'm asking you to think about Lucas here. I know that little dude didn't do anything wrong," I acknowledged. "But neither did I. I'm sorry, Greg, but I can't raise another man's child that was born from a lie. I just can't." On Sunday, Nina texted that Ryan is refusing to take the court-ordered paternity test. He says he knows he's not the father and that she's trying to fuck him over. Ironic, right? What goes around comes around, I guess. In the preliminary hearing, Nina showed up with her own lawyer. I expected her to contest everything, but surprisingly, she didn't. Her lawyer said they're not opposing the petition to disestablish paternity. They're just requesting visitation rights for me if I want them, since Lucas knows me as his father. The judge ordered Ryan to appear for a DNA test the following Monday. If he doesn't show, there could be a warrant issued for him. The court finally ruled on my case 6 weeks after my last update. My name has officially been removed from Lucas's birth certificate. I'm legally not his father anymore. It might sound weird, but when the judge made it official, I felt this strange mix of relief and emptiness at the same time. That dude Ryan finally took the DNA test, which confirmed what we already knew. He's the biological father. Now he's legally responsible for child support. My lawyer says I'm lucky this didn't drag out for years, which apparently happens a lot in these situations. Small victories, I guess. After the court ruling, things got even weirder. Nina called me crying, saying Lucas was sick with an ear infection and Ryan wouldn't help. "You're the only one he knows," she sobbed. I hung up on her. The next day, she showed up at my apartment with Lucas, banging on the door and crying. I didn't answer. I just watched through the peephole as she eventually gave up and left. She slipped a note under the door that just said, "He'll always be your son in the ways that matter." I burned that note in the kitchen sink. I had my lawyer send her a cease and desist letter after that. She hasn't contacted me since. It's been hard, not going to lie. For the first month after the court decision, I'd wake up sometimes thinking I heard Lucas crying in the other room. I would actually get out of bed before remembering he wasn't there. Was never really mine to begin with. I ended up taking Chris's advice and donated literally everything baby related to a women's shelter. The crib, clothes, toys, all of it. I kept absolutely nothing. That was a rough day, boxing all that stuff up. I found this daddy's best buddy onesie I'd bought him before he was born. I almost kept it, but knew that would just mess me up in the long run. I got a transfer to my company's Chicago office. New city, new apartment, new phone number, a whole new start. I told only a couple of close friends where I was going. A complete fresh start was what I needed. For anyone else going through something similar, get the DNA test right away if you have any doubts. Don't wait, and lawyer up immediately. The legal system isn't designed to be fair to guys in our situation. Also, finding out that someone you loved could lie to your face every day for a year really fucks with your head. Makes it hard to trust anyone. I'm working on that in therapy too. I don't think I'll ever post about this again. I'm closing this chapter of my life for good and moving forward. I'm focusing on myself, my job, and my dog. I'm reconnecting with old friends who don't ask about the baby. Thanks everyone for helping me through the darkest time of my life, for all the advice, support, and just letting me vent. It meant more than you know. Edit. To the people asking if I'll ever date again, yeah, eventually, just not ready yet. Trust issues, you know. Edit 2. For everyone asking about Ryan. Last I heard, Nina was taking him back to court because he missed child support payments. Not my circus, not my monkeys.